How's it going, everyone? Hope you are having a happy Tuesday, or as some of us might say, may the 4th be with you. It is Star Wars Day, everybody. Which, should be a happier thing. And was at a time before, Star Wars was crumpled up into a paper wad, thrown in a trash bin, and set on fire. And then that flaming ash heap of a trash can was then thrown into a volcano. But anyway, welcome to Tuesday edition, special different time edition of Blind Eye Live. I am your host, Hunter King, Blind Eye himself, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media, a small internet media firm. And today I'm going to do my AFC draft grades. I did my NFC grades yesterday. I will once again be using that Mel Kiper's draft grades article. Not that I'm actually using them. It's just got all the teams right there and their draft picks. So that's what I'm going to be doing, or using as kind of a prompt. And may have a Star Wars rant in me. I don't know. That was a little mini one, or not even really a mini one. I know that was a shot across the bow there to start the day. But I would say that I have some opinions on Star Wars. But and maybe we'll get into some news, some sports news here in a bit. If you will, boom. Maybe we should hit some headlines to start off with before we get into it. Now we'll try and keep the show much shorter than yesterday's was. So, let's check this out. Let me check and see if I've got my angle right. Okay, that'll work. So, top stories, Eagles GM, who cares? Why is that a top headline? Manchester, oh yeah, that was a big thing today. I watched some of that today. Manchester City ousting PSG. We finally are reaching our first Champions League final, and we dominated the game today. Kershaw got lit up by the Cubs today. I think his career is coming to an end soon. Mets DeGrom scratched, having MR on his right side. Oh, that sucks. If DeGrom's hurt, he's one of the best pitchers in the league. Avens cornerback. Oh, and Marcus Peters is whining about being traded away from the Rams. Dude, chill. Who cares? Oh, LeBron's got to rest his ankle, so he's out the Thursday and Friday. Metcalf's going to run. Oh, DK Metcalf. He's going to be running at a USA track and field event. That's kind of cool. Let's see what we got here. Some other headlines. And, oh, that sucks. So, Broncos right tackle Jawan Jennings decided to sit out last season, opt out because of COVID, and he's torn his Achilles getting back in shape. I hate it for him, but, maybe don't sit out of football for a year. Some big news that happened today. Also, this is kind of interesting. Well, how about I'll bring up that. Da-da-da. Huh. Let's see. Well, I guess we'll check this out. NFL Draft draws 160,000 fans despite pandemic, points to brighter days ahead. Oh yeah, it was a great event. It went awesome. I think that's really cool. But it is kind of interesting because I think it was John Gruden was talking about how it's kind of funny how we can have over 100,000 people attend the NFL draft, but we can't do off-season stuff in person or be at the facilities together in person right now. Kind of interesting. I think he's got a real good point. Bigger news. So the Baltimore Ravens signed Alejandro Villanueva to a 2-year deal. Their offensive line is going to be huge, by the way. I checked this out earlier. So it's a 2-year, $14 million deal, $8 million fully guaranteed at signing. So Villanueva, who is 32, came in the league in 2015. Yeah, or 2014. Let me 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, 2015. So he started at left tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers for the past 6 seasons, starting 90 of the 96 games he has played. I don't believe he has missed or I think that's just regular season. I don't know if that's counting. I don't think that's counting postseason play. He hasn't missed a game from what I understand, and he hasn't missed a start since he became a starter. He's actually, despite being a little bit slimmer than Orlando Brown, he was actually a better run blocker last season. He was ranked 18th. Brown was ranked 21st. And considering the Ravens ran the ball 50.3% of the time last year, and I don't expect that to change a ton this season, upgrading even slightly as in your run blocking, especially at right tackle, is probably a good thing. Villanueva is kind of incredible. So he was let's see. I'm trying to remember where in the article it talked about his services. Probably after this. Let's go through the Ravens' offensive line, or potential starting offensive line here. So Baltimore, left tackle Ronnie Stanley will be back, 6'6", 315. You have rookie draft pick Ben Cleveland, who looks like he'll start at left guard, who is 6'6", 357 pounds. And he can move. I know, I watched a lot of him in college at Georgia. Center, Bradley Bozeman, who is 6'5", 325. Right guard, Kevin Zeitler, who they just signed, who's 6'4", 315. And now Villanueva at right tackle, who is 6'9", 320 pounds. And 2 other teams I thought might be interested in his services are the Colts and the Dolphins. I think after drafting Liam Eichenberg, the Dolphins probably weren't willing to pay as much as maybe the Ravens were. And maybe the Colts weren't willing to pay as much either as the Ravens. Which, to be honest, I feel like the Colts really needed to go after Villanueva after not drafting a offensive tackle or what I would consider one of the starting caliber or potential starting caliber left tackles in this draft. Villanueva is a former Army Ranger, American hero, who served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He was part of 2 divisions, 10th Mountain and 75th Ranger Regiment, before becoming an NFL player. He signed a 4-year contract with Pittsburgh in July 2017 after his first couple years in the league, and he was a Pro Bowl selection in 2017 and 2018. during which time the Steelers' offensive line absolutely was among the league's best, if it was not the league's best. Gave up just 24 sacks each of those seasons, which is awesome. In his 6 seasons on the active roster, Villanueva started 90 of the 96 games in which he appeared. Which, if you're doing the math, there are 16 games in a regular season, and he played 6 seasons. Meaning he did not miss a game. But yeah, 6'9", 320 to replace, what was Brown? 6'7", 6'8", and he played at like 350, 360 or something crazy like that. So the Ravens landing arguably the biggest available free agent left. Although Charles Leno is out there, and Charles Leno could be a interesting get for the Colts potentially. So, yeah, that's just some NFL headlines. Let's get into the draft. Let's get into my draft grades. So, we'll start with the AFC West. I started with the NFC West yesterday. So, you have the Los Angeles Chargers. I'll just start with them because they're just right here at the top. And they had one of the best drafts, in my opinion. This team needed offensive tackle, cornerback, outside linebacker, which absolutely. Really, I would say just edge in general. So let's look at the class. So to start off, Rashawn Slater falls to them at 13. No-brainer, A+ value. This was a top 10 player. He was my top offensive tackle. Pick 47, you get Asante Samuel Jr. I thought this guy was a late first-round pick. This guy doesn't really have any durability concerns. I don't care that he's not, 6 foot tall or whatever. I think he's actually a little bit taller, a little bit longer than his dad. And his dad was amazing. And Samuel can play any type of coverage. He can fit any scheme. He's incredibly instinctive. Great ball skills. He's a playmaker. Incredibly quick and agile. I love that pick. You get that guy at 47. I was kind of hoping he'd last a few more picks to the Titans pick. But when I was mocking things, just because I felt like Samuel, while I believed he was a first rounder or a first round talent, I knew that a lot of teams were going to let him slide because he doesn't have all the physical tools. And you can be a elite player, but you lack upside because you're not 6'1", which is stupid. Jair Alexander, who is, I think, smaller than Asante Samuel, or at least as small, locked up big old Mike Evans in the NFC title game. He could do nothing because Jair Alexander's so good. And Asante Samuel, my pro comp, for players who are in the NFL right now, my comp for him is Jair Alexander. I don't know if he's quite as fast top end as Alexander, but he's close. Now, I will say, I love my man Josh Palmer out of the University of Tennessee. I was really shocked to see him go 77. He's a long, well-built, physical receiver. Got pretty good top-end speed. Really good on contested catches. And making difficult catches. I think he, to some degree, is a little underrated, or he's a bit underrated, and probably would have more justified a selection in this range if he had had better quarterback play in college. However, the Washington football team was able to get Dyami Brown at, I think, pick 84. And I thought Dyami Brown could sneak in the back end of the first round and was, I figured he would go easily, somewhere between, or somewhere in the second round. And the, Washington football team got him, in the back half of the second round. I like Palmer a lot, but I think that's a little bit of a reach. Trey McKitty, who is another guy that I talked about that I liked, I think is a little bit of a reach at pick 97 in the third round. I mean, they definitely need to do something at tight end, but I mean, Brevin Jordan was on the board, and he's simply a better prospect. So, and I would say the same about Zach Davidson, who went, I think, into the 5th round out of Central Arkansas. Or was it Central Missouri? No, I think it was Central Arkansas. Then Chris Rump, they got at pick 118 in the 4th round. I thought that was a really good value. And he can be a somewhat versatile piece there. Brendan James, offensive tackle, Nebraska. Actually was a sneaky good pick. He's not like some incredible athlete. He's not super long. But he's actually got really good pass blocking tape, and his footwork's really good. I think that was actually a really good pick in the 5th round. And should help you long term. At the very least, you've got yourself a nice developmental or a nice solid swing tackle of the future. Nick Neiman, linebacker out of Iowa, he had a crazy pro day. He's got a lot of athletic upside. I think Larry Roundtree is a great late 6th round pick. Or actually maybe that's mid 6th round. Anyway, I think really good value in the 6th round. He was extremely productive at Missouri. Statistically one of the best running backs to ever come out of the University of Missouri. I think he's a solid player. And then Mark Webb out of Georgia, not crazy athletic, not necessarily a center fielding safety or anything, but he's a intelligent player who could make the team as a 7th round pick. So, I mean, simply on the value of Slater and Samuel alone, and Rumpf, and then the potential upside of Neiman, I think James is solid. Palmer, McKitty, I mean, they're positions of need, maybe a little bit of reaches, but they are players that I did like. They're just reaches. But getting Slater and Samuel where they did, it's hard not to agree. I would have to give the Chargers an A there. Let's see. So let's see who would be the next AFC West team. Let's go with Kansas City. So when you factor in that they trade down for Orlando Brown, I think really nice draft. That was a decent move, and you only moved down from the 1st round to the 2nd round. It's not like you just straight up lost all the picks or whatever. I think, and they sent a 3rd rounder in that trade. But this is such a great tackle class, and Tevin Jenkins was on the board at 32, or at 31, where they would have been picking. And I absolutely think they missed out on an opportunity to get a great player who's also cheaper that they're not going to have to just turn around and pay like they're going to with Orlando Brown. So there is that. But Nick Bolton, 58, there were linebackers on the board that I like better, but pretty much everyone kind of had Bolton in this range. I'd say that's they got pretty good value there. Creed Humphrey was a great pick. The Packers literally, the pick before this, drafted Josh Myers, who was a 5th round prospect to me at the same position. Humphrey was absolutely the 2nd best center on the board, or center in this draft. They got him at 63, and it was a position of need. Even though they did sign Austin Blythe in free agency, I think Creed Humphreys probably would be better than him, like from the jump, or at least at some point this year we'll get there. Their third choice, 4th round, Joshua Kando out of Florida State. He's long. He has some nice traits, but I thought this was a overdraft for him at 144. Like, even though it's a late 4th round pick, there were just better prospects at other positions they needed on the board. I believe Brevin Jordan, a tight end, was still on the board at 144 that they could have drafted, who is much better than Noah Gray, who they drafted in the 5th round at tight end. Gray has actually ended up having some nice like athletic testing numbers, but it doesn't really show on its tape at all. I don't see like a future starter, but you've got Travis Kelce, so I guess it's not a big deal. And I thought they might need to add some competition behind Kelce at tight end. Then they got Cornell Powell at 181. I thought that was a really good pick. Powell looks like he shredded like DK Metcalf. He's not as like fast, straight line fast, but this guy is going to help block on the perimeter. He gives you a more physical presence at receiver than they have right now. I think that was a really good move. And then one of the best value picks in the draft was Trey Smith, which he fell, I guess, because of the lung issues, or the blood clot issues he had like over 2 years ago now. He's come back, started an entire season. Actually, I'm trying to remember, did he play some in 2019 as well? Like, Trey Smith is back. I'm not super worried about that issue. And, this guy probably, if you're looking on just his physical talent alone and his versatility, this guy probably, if it wasn't for the blood clots, this guy would have been a 1st round prospect anyway. So a lot of people thought he might go like kind of the back half of the 2nd round, maybe the top of the 3rd because of that. Instead, he falls to pick 226. There are not 225 better prospects in this draft than Trey Smith. There's not, and I would argue there might not even be 50 better physical prospects, like in terms of their physical abilities, physical tools, and their tape. And they got him at 226. So yeah, I think that was an incredible value there. So with that being said, I like the value of their picks. I thought Bolton was fine and filled a need. Humphrey was good value, filled a need. Wasn't in love with the Kando or Gray picks. The Gray pick was like okay. Powell, I thought, was a really good pick, and then Trey Smith was a great value. But they didn't have like a lot of picks to go with here. They made 6 selections, and 4 of them were outside of the top 140 picks. Like, and Powell, I think, will also help on special teams, but I'm going to give it a B. Also, because, because I'm going to factor the Brown trade in. This was such a good tackle class, in my opinion, that really I didn't love that use of resources. So I'm going to give that a B. I'm going to give them a B. Oh, there's the Broncos, so I'll just go from here. And let's see, linebacker corner, linebacker. Kuiper gave him a B. That's interesting. Let me check the chat real quick. Yep, nothing. If you are tuned in, feel free to drop in the chat. I'm checking that. I'm down to answer questions or even get off this topic even. Let's see. So the Broncos, of course, went with Patrick Surtain at pick number 9. I thought that was a great pick. Javonte Williams at 35. I feel like their running back room was, I mean, they had Melvin Gordon and Royce Freeman there. Williams has really good tape. But I don't know. I didn't like him as much as other people, and I just don't like the value of him at 35. Personally, especially when you consider like some of the players that were on the board there, like edge players that they could have developed or that they could have drafted to develop, or interior defensive line players that they could have drafted at 35. But he could be better than Melvin Gordon from day one. So there's that. I love the Quinn Miners pick at 98. I mean, that's a comp selection in the 3rd round. And you're getting a guy that I thought easily should go probably back half of the 2nd round. He is going to improve their offensive line. He has great athletic traits, and he looked awesome at the Senior Bowl. I like the Baron Browning pick at 105 too. Browning is really athletic. He can do a bit of everything. He has coverage upside because of his athleticism. He's a very effective blitzer, so he has pass rush upside. And like I said, and sideline to sideline ability, I think he ran like a 4.52 40, which compared to some of the top or the elite linebacker prospects that went early, that didn't sound fast. But most years he's going to be one of the fastest linebackers, and he still is one of the fastest linebackers. Then in round 5, they went back to back at safety, so they brought back Simmons and Kareem Jackson. And Jackson can also play some nickel. They draft Caden Stearns and Jamar Johnson. Y'all know I love Jamar Johnson. I've talked about him a lot. So I think it's funny that Stearns went ahead of him. And I'm not surprised that Johnson ended up in the 5th round because, I mean, a 4.6 40 is not great. But his tape is great. And he has some inconsistent tackling on tape. Vic Fangio is going to coach him up there. Like, that's not going to be a problem, I don't think. I think he is going to be great as kind of a box, kind of like a bandit type player. He's not as big as some people who would play that role, but I mean, he's 6 foot. I think he's like 208. I love Johnson. And Stearns was a solid value in round 5. He's not an amazing safety prospect, but he's a solid safety prospect. So now they've got options for the future because Kareem Jackson, he's several years past 30 at this point. Like, he's not going to last forever. And you need rotatable guys anyway in today's NFL. You can't have too many capable defenders. So you've got 2 guys. One of those guys should hit. And then I love the Seth Williams value in the 6th round at 219. This guy was, to me, a 3rd round prospect. 4th round prospect. His 40 time kind of dropped him a little for me, but in terms of his physicality, his ability to make contested catches, stuff like Seth Williams is great. They didn't need another receiver, but he gives them like a potential. He gives them kind of a backup plan for Cortland Sutton if Cortland Sutton gets hurt, or just it gives them someone else who fits that profile like Cortland Sutton. I don't think he's quite as good as Sutton, but not that bad. And then Carrie Vincent. I guess people just forgot about Vincent. 237 overall, went in the 7th round. I don't understand how he was still available. Vincent has elite speed. He's one of the fastest players in this draft. He sat out last year. I guess people forgot. The reason he was a slot corner at LSU was because he was playing with Christian Fulton, Greedy Williams, Stingley. I'm trying to think of a couple of the other corners and defensive backs who were there. I mean, but the great thing about Vincent is I think he could, because of his speed and his ability in the slot, I think he actually could also play free safety. So he could give them a elite center fielding free safety prospect too, as well as a guy who can play. I think he could play just about anywhere in the secondary, except maybe strong safety. I wouldn't say he's a box player, but Vincent, in terms of his coverage ability or coverage upside, is great. And I thought Jonathan Cooper at 2 picks later at 239 in the 7th round, I thought Cooper would go much earlier. I thought he could sneak into the top 100 picks, and I loved his value in the 4th round. I thought that was great. And then Marquis Spencer, he's fine. SEC edge play or kind of defender. I would say his fit maybe as a 3-4 end, maybe a base 4-3 end on rundowns, but he's a solid pick for 253 overall. So the Broncos, I gave the Chargers an A minus because I thought I kind of want to give the Chargers an A just because those first 2 picks. Whatever. I do think their 2 third-round picks were reaches, particularly I think McKitty a little bit, but I think the Broncos just get an A because I like the value of all of their picks except maybe Javonte Williams, but I also get it. So, and they could get a starter, an upgrade at running back right there. So, I actually like this way better than a B. Some of it, the reason people are kind of being low on them, though, is because they passed on Justin Fields. I still think if Drew Lock with a better offensive line, which one thing that sucks for the Broncos, like we said earlier, Jawan James, who they were kind of seemingly counting on as, I think to be their starting right tackle this year, he's out. He's going to miss the season. So having a more mobile quarterback would help. But even with that, I think Lock, because you just would imagine that his teammates would stay healthier this year, or especially his weapons. I think personally that they should be okay. I really like that draft for the Broncos, so I'm going to give them an A. Yeah. Okay, let's hit Las Vegas here. Which Las Vegas takes a huge hit for their first pick. Alex Leatherwood. He wasn't in my top 50. I thought he could sneak into the 2nd round. There's times I like his tape. There's times I don't. He's not an incredible athlete, but he's still a solid athlete, but his link's not great. Compared to a bunch of the other offensive tackle prospects, I thought Leatherwood could play tackle, but I know he can play. I think he could be a really, really good guard. I just didn't see the value at 17 when you've got Christian Darrisaw and Tevin Jenkins on the board. And heck, a bunch of guys that I had rated ahead of Leatherwood went in the 2nd, and even Jalen Mayfield's case and Brady Christensen's case, the 3rd round. So, I don't know. The value there is an F on that pick, even though he fits a need. The thing is, after that, I kind of love their draft. Trevin Moehrig, I thought, and this is the thing, I thought Moehrig could go at 17 to them. If they flipped Moehrig at 43 to 17 and Leatherwood from 17 to 43. Actually, the value for Leatherwood, I would have kind of understood it then. Then you get Malcolm Kuntz at 79, which I think is probably towards the top end of his range for me. But I like Kuntz a lot. And there are things about him that there are things about him that you could compare to another former Buffalo pass rusher that the Raiders have drafted in the past, i.e. Khalil Mack. But I'm not saying he is. He's not quite the athlete, but he's built the same. He does have a really good first step. He dominated the MAC conference. But there were some players that went, I believe there were a few guys that went after him that I liked better than him. So, but I still think that was a solid pick. Love the Devon Diablo pick at 80. Should I say, I love him as a player. I actually had him rated behind Tyree Gillespie, who they got at 143. But both those guys fit for them. Like this team, and from what this signals to me is that they probably are to some degree giving up on Jonathan Abram, or they're willing to let people beat him out. Abram was a guy I thought was very overrated. Diablo, and the thing is, you're looking at these guys as safety, or they are all listed as safeties. Not all these guys are created the same. So Morig came up. TCU played a ton of like too high safety stuff. He wasn't asked to center field a lot, but he does have really good range. He's probably like, and as I've said, he probably is the best all around safety in the draft. It's him or Javon Holland. And they got Morig. Actually, I think Richie Grant got drafted ahead of Morig. I think the Falcons took him at like 40, and I couldn't believe that he went before Morig. But Diablo's a big safety. He's like 6'3 and a half, like 228. He ran in the low 4.4s. He's extremely athletic. He has really good range. He's really physical. He's actually pretty fluid for a guy his size. I think if you're talking about a guy who can play that bandit role, kind of like a hybrid safety linebacker, nickel kind of player, he might not be a great match against like small slot guys, but against like slot tight ends and stuff like that, he could play like a big nickel role. And I think he has the speed. He probably can play some free safety too, or like that center field role if you're going to play some robber coverage, or you have him out there with say with Morig or Gillespie, and typically they're the one dropping back as kind of more of a free safety type, and then Diablo, all of a sudden you flip him and you play some robber. Like, he can get back. He could do that some. And Gillespie's incredible as well. And Gillespie has tape covering some of the best players drafted in the first round and winning against them in coverage. He has coverage wins against Javonte Smith, against Kyle Pitts. He has run game stops wins against Najee Harris at the goal line. Gillespie's a very versatile and safety who's really athletic. I think he's amazing value there. Obviously, they really want to upgrade that safety spot. And then a developmental corner in Nate Hobbs out of Illinois. I didn't have him. I figured he could go in the 7th round. Didn't have him in the I didn't have him in the 5th round for sure. And then Jimmy Morrissey, center out of Pittsburgh in the 7th round. Whatever. Because of Leatherwood, you have to knock the grade, but I love the 4 picks in the middle of their 7 picks in this draft. Like, just full stop. Like, Morg was an A+. Kuntz, I'll give a B+. Diablo and Gillespie. Diablo, I'll give... That might be a little ahead of Diablo. Or of where maybe he... Well, I had kind of a 3rd, 4th round grade on him. Like, I like him. He has tons of upside. I'll give that a B+. And I'm giving Gillespie an A+, because I thought, well, he was my 4th safety. Like, I had him above Diablo. So, I'm going to give the Raiders a B. Kuiper gave him a B-. I'm going to give him a B just because the Leatherwood value was just so bad. Just so bad. Let's see if I run into... See, I've done the Chargers, Broncos, and the Chiefs. So I've done all. I've hit all of those. Let me just boom refresh. I will use this as a chance. Let's flip over. Nope, still nothing in the chat. I don't care about your ads or your videos. Okay, so that was the AFC West. Let's quickly go. Man, let's see. Let's quickly move to the... Let's do the AFC North. Yeah, let's do the North. So we'll start with... Oh, hey, look there. Baltimore. So I liked Baltimore's draft. Bateman at 27 was a great pick. I basically kept saying it's like the pick needs to be him or Terrace Marshall. And I mean, they needed to upgrade. He's not as big as we thought because Minnesota had obviously overlisted him, but Bateman kind of struggled with his tape last year. So Bateman actually was recovering from COVID. And he decided to play once the Big Ten decided they were going to have a season. And from what I've heard from my friends who have gotten COVID and everything, because nobody that I personally know, like myself, has really experienced like the worst of the worst effects, except for one of my friend's dads. And even then, it was still manageable because he got the post-COVID pneumonia, but the rest of his family didn't. His mom got over it like that. I know some people who got COVID and got over it like that. But even then, they said like for a little while, it still took them a while to kind of get back, kind of like feeling like you were really getting like your full lung capacity back. And different people were affected worse than others. It seems like different races even were affected differently. And different types of people, whatever, are affected somewhat differently. So a lot of athletes who've come back from this, because it's different when you're just a normal person or your average person, and then someone who's pushing its body to its limits. You're someone who is pushing for peak performance. I would imagine it's a lot harder to get back to that, to where you're used to when you're an athlete compared to just like if I were to get COVID, because I haven't gotten it. But that played a role in like Bateman not seeming as good in 2020 as 2019. Bateman was amazing in 2019. I think Bateman just an awesome. I thought that was an awesome pick. And then Odafe Owe, Formerly, what was he going by before? Jeremy Owe? Well, Odafe Owe is the freakiest athlete in this draft, probably. It's him or Kyle Pitts, I would say. Well, or Parsons or Davis. It's those four guys. Owe's ridiculously athletic. He has incredible tools, and if there's a team I would trust in this league to get the most out of those tools, it would be the Ravens. You're talking 6'5", 6'6", 257, 3'3", like 3'3". He ran in the 4.3s. Originally, I think it was 4.34. Now they're saying it was like a 4.37, 4.38, something like that. Whatever. It's still insane for a guy his size. And he had 5.5 sacks in 2019. He didn't have any last year in the shortened Big Ten season. The difference was his run defense tape was terrible in 2019. In 2020, he showed great improvement in that regard. And he did get a lot of pressures on the quarterback last season, the Big Ten, without getting a quarterback on the ground. I think that pick, it's very much an upside pick, but the Ravens had a lot of draft capital to work with, and that was a need. Judon's gone. Ngakwe, who they traded for last year, is gone. This gives them probably the highest upside edge rusher they have had since Peter Bulaware or Adalius Thomas. It's been a while, folks. Then I loved Ben Cleveland at 94. Ben Cleveland was absolutely a second-round guy for me. Dude is, like I said earlier when we were talking about Villanueva and the Ravens offensive line, this man is 6'6", 357 pounds, and he can move. And he's got great technique. He was great at Georgia. The Ravens offensive line will be better this year. Now, I didn't love the pick at 104 quite as much. Brandon Stevens out of SMU. He was a day 3 guy for me. I get like 104. That's basically the end of the third round. But there were better corners on the board that went later. Maybe he has more up. And while he may have some more physical upside than a Shaun Wade, who they got at 160 in the 5th round, Wade is one of the best slot corners in this draft, who has some experience playing on the outside, though not as good. I think for the Ravens, that was amazing value. And then Tylan Wallace goes at 131 in the 4th round. That's ridiculous. I really don't understand how Tylan Wallace lasted that long. Now he's listed 5'11", 194. He plays bigger than that. He plays more physical than that. I think he had like a 4.5 flat 40. That's fine. This guy was great in college. And played in an offense and played the same role in the offense that many quality or wide receiver player prospects quality like receivers have come out of this offense. Now, he couldn't get out of his own way off the field, but Justin Blackmon was an incredible college receiver and showed flashes early in his pro career before, immolating himself off the field. Des Bryant came out of this offense. Des Bryant was a Pro Bowl receiver for Dallas. James Washington has been solid for Pittsburgh coming out of that offense. I feel like I'm forgetting another guy, but I think Tylan Wallace, just like Rashad Bateman. And Wallace was coming off an ACL injury, came back, and he looked really, really good last year. I can't believe that. And he looked awesome at the Senior Bowl. It's really surprised me that he lasted that long. That's an A-plus, pick. Cleveland was an A-plus pick. Bateman to me was an A-plus pick. Owe, he's so raw, but I think he fell in the best spot. Let's see. Wade, that at 160, getting a guy who probably can be your starting slot corner and be one of the better ones, or potentially end up being one of the better slot corners in the league over the life of his rookie deal. A+. Dalen Hayes, okay pick in the 5th round. And then the Ravens use the fullback in their offense. They didn't have any more picks in the draft, so they took seemingly the consensus best fullback for most of the people that I follow in the 5th round. I think that was fine value. And considering they've got Villanueva too, the Stevens pick was a reach, but otherwise, I love the players they got out of this draft. I'm tempted to give them an A+. Heck, I'm going to give the Ravens an A+. They turned a guy that they were going to have to pay a big, expensive contract into multiple picks. Because I believe that Stevens pick, the Stevens or Cleveland pick they got from the Chiefs. I'm going to say that was the Cleveland pick. So, yeah, to me, outstanding. And one of those 5th round picks they got from the Chiefs as well. So, I'm going to give the Ravens an A+. Absolutely an A+. So let's slide up here. And we're going to go and we're going to look at Cincinnati. Oh, wait. That's, right here. Oh, I guess I just needed to go down literally 2 spots or whatever. Because, let's see, Carolina. Yeah, so basically what Kuiper does is he gives out his grades and then he puts them in kind of like alphabetical order for where they, or based on those, B, whatever. So let's look at Cincy's draft. So they ended up going with Jamar Chase in the 1st round. I talked about this on Friday's show. I love that pick. And the way the board ended up falling, I'm like, man, all these awesome tackles are on the board. We get to 46, and all these great offensive tackle, or several great offensive tackle prospects are still on the board that I really like the value on. And then they go with Jackson Carman, who I thought might go in the 3rd round. Towards the end of the 3rd round. Like, Jalen Mayfield goes, I think, 22 spots after this. I think he lasts till, pick 68. I had Mayfield ahead of him. Samuel Cosmi. Carmen's tape is probably a little more solid, but Cosmi has so much more upside, and he's going to get better coaching at the position at the NFL level than what he was getting at Texas, in my opinion. So there's that. But that's what they needed, and Carman is a big, strong guy who should be able to slide right in at right tackle. Well, I say slide in. He could play guard, and there's a lot of people who see him as a guard. He could start at guard and then eventually kick out to offensive tackle, but I would have rather had someone who really was going to push Riley Reef, but maybe he does. I just think there were higher upside, and even 4 offensive linemen available. I'll say this. I did have Alex Leatherwood ahead of Carman, so there's that. Then 69, getting Joseph Osai at pick 69 was incredible value to me. I talked about how Osai was one of my guys. This is really going to help them. Then they get Cam Sample at 111 in the 4th round. Once again, getting this guy a full round later than I expected him to go. Or should I say, I expected him to go in the 3rd round. They get him at the top of the 4th. I thought Sample could even sneak into the back end of the 2nd, depending on what teams are looking for. I thought Osai was clearly, at the very least, I thought he was a top 50 player. Getting him at 69 is really good value. Then they get Tyler Shelvin, which probably signals that DJ Reader, if he's not amazing this year, is probably gone next year. With most, if not all, of his guaranteed money up. Getting Tyler Shelvin at 122 is great value. I love the Deontay Smith pick at 139, and as far as I'm concerned, he is a way higher upside player than Carmen. And I thought this was really good value at 139. Then the Bengals draft the best kicker in this draft in Evan Mcpherson at 149. I'm totally cool with drafting specialists once you get kind of to this point, especially if they're as good as Mcpherson. McPherson's one of the best college kickers. He's one of the best college kickers I've ever seen. Then they got my 3rd-rated center at pick 130. Pick 190 in the 6th round. 190. Trey Hill is awesome. This guy was, I think, my 76th ranked player, and you got him at 190. Stupid good value. Amazing value. Chris Evans out of Michigan at 202. It's okay. Solid. And then I thought Wyatt Hubert was a nice get at 235. I thought he could go round 5, round 6. So you're getting that guy, which really that late, there's a lot of guys who really bleed together. But Hubert, there were guys drafted ahead of Hubert that I like better. I had Hubert. I'll say this. I had Hubert rated ahead of Evans. So there's that. But overall, this was a great draft. I don't love the Carmen value, but they did such a good job in this draft of hitting. This is a team that is very obviously building through the trenches. They did not draft a tight end, which was a position I think they definitely had a need at. But obviously you're committing to the offensive line. Obviously you're committing to your defensive line. You got your quarterback an elite number 1 receiver. You upgraded your kicker spot as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I thought this was a great draft. I absolutely give this one an A+. I think other than Carmen, pretty much all of their picks were, other than Evans, were plus value. Or at the very least, McPherson, you could say, well, it's a kicker, really, but that's a great kicker right there. In terms of his pedigree and his ability coming out, he's awesome. And how about that? The Browns are right here, so I can hit them. I think this is kind of an interesting grade, giving them a B. I thought Newsome was a really good value at 26. They got, arguably the best value pick in the draft in Joker here. Sorry, I'm a little thirsty. Newsome gives them just another long athletic corner. Maybe puts Greedy Williams on a little bit of notice. Like I said, Joker at pick 52. For a lot of guys, this was a top 15 player on to them. Apparently, there must be some kind of medical thing or something that caused him to slide, but that's an A plus pick right there for with Koromoa. Anthony Schwartz at 91. You're infusing your offense with elite speed. With Schwartz at 91, I think that's a really nice value. James Hudson. A lot of people were really high on Hudson. I wasn't, but getting him at 110, I think, is actually really good. I think that's good value, and this allows you to develop a swing tackle who maybe, or considering Jack Conklin's had some injury stuff in the past, that's pretty good. And you could maybe even play Hudson at guard. Tommy Togiai, I think that's a solid pick at 132. I thought he could potentially go in the third round, so getting him at in the back end of the fourth, really nice. Tony Fields out of West Virginia. Fields was really, really good at West Virginia. Getting him in the fifth round, nice pick. I mean, you've definitely improved your linebacker group getting Koromoa and Fields. And Koromoa is one of the most versatile players in the draft. Richard LeCount, I think, was really good value at the back end of round 5. And then Demetric Felton, another one of the steals of the draft. Getting him at 211 is A++++. Y'all have heard, anyone who's been following my draft coverage knows that I have been talking about Demetric Felton a ton. This guy is a weapon. He can play running back. He can make plays out of the backfield in the passing game. But I really think, like, as a movable weapon, as a slot receiver, Felton, he's incredibly quick, and he looked awesome just torching corners at the Senior Bowl. I think he's already 23, but Felton has a lot of upside and a lot of development that can happen. I think that was an awesome pick. And you've gone from having like a really good receiving core in Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, and Rashad Higgins, and there's another guy I'm missing because I think they brought someone else in free agency. And now you've added Anthony Schwartz and Demetric Felton, who Schwartz is a blazing fast player, and Felton's got some really good top-end speed, but he is so quick and agile and slippery. They've got a ton of athletes to work with, a ton of weapons to work with on offense. And, I mean, they just they basically hit every position group here. You added to your safety depth. You added and probably improved your corner group. Because even the competition, even if Greedy Williams coming back from injury beats Newsome out even for the starting job, that still helps that's adding competition. That's helping your cornerback room's talent. You can never have too many corners. Koromoa allows for versatility. You're going to be able to play this guy a lot. Like he can play the slot. Hudson helping out on your offensive line, which was a much improved unit last year. Tommy Togiai, you needed to improve your interior defensive line, especially after cutting Sheldon Richardson. I think Togiai's a nice player. I don't necessarily see like a future star or anything, but like he should be a solid rotational defensive tackle, and like even as high as like a quality number 2, like second defensive tackle, second starter. Tony Fields is a solid linebacker. And then, I mean, yeah, you just hit everything because Felton is listed as a receiver here, but he also gives you running back depth and should help in the return game too. As can Schwartz for sure. I love this draft. It gets an A+ for me because particularly Koromoa and Felton, the value on those picks for me is just insane. So, once again, I just think a great job by the Browns. Which, though, one of the knocks here is they didn't get like an edge player, and I get that. But you've got Myles Garrett. You brought in Jadeveon Clowney and Takk McKinley. Can you count on either of them? Not necessarily, but both of them have incredible upside. Clowney has been productive before. McKinley has shown flashes. We will see. And I'll get into some undrafted stuff, but just even on the note with the interior line for the Browns, apparently they believe that they're going to be able to bring back Sheldon Richardson on a cheaper deal than what he was going to be paid this year. And even beyond that, they were able to pick up Marvin Wilson as an undrafted free agent at defensive tackle. I'm trying to figure out why he dropped completely out of the draft. Like going into during the 2019 season, there were people that viewed him as a first-round talent, at the very least, a second-round talent. Somehow this guy then ends up like, it seemed like most people thought he'd be a kind of like an early day 3 pick, like 4th round, and he goes undrafted. I think getting him undrafted is great, but I'm not going to count that into draft grades. Oh wait, Steelers are the opposite direction. I know where the Steelers are. They're down here. They're oof. Okay. So yeah. Where? So many teams with B- grades. Okay, there's the Saints. So the next should be the Steelers. Yep. So the Steelers, I don't hate the Steelers draft. Like, I think this is kind of low. I don't love necessarily the value of a running back in round 1 when you have a bunch of other critical needs, and one of your needs is the thing that makes your running back better anyway, which is the offensive line. And then at pick 55, there's some really nice offensive linemen on the board still, like tackles like Jalen Mayfield, and they take Pat Freiermuth, which Freiermuth, this is a great pick. I think this is a great value at the end of the 2nd round, or in the back third of the round. And he'll help you in the run game because he's a good blocker, and he's a really great receiver. He's the most Gronk-like tight end in this class, I would say. But I don't know. It's a good pick. Like, Harris is a really good player, and to me was really the only running back I would consider in the 1st round, even ETN. I would have rather gotten in the 2nd round. But Najee is definitely the best running back in this class to me, so I get it. Love Kendrick Green at pick 87. Great value. There's your Marquise Pouncey replacement. Dan Moore at pick 128. Nice pick. You need an offensive tackle. But I don't see him being a day 1 starter. So Buddy Johnson was another nice pick. Moore's teammate at A&M. Solid inside linebacker. 140. Okay, that's fine. That's a fine pick. Loudermilk, defensive tackle out of Wisconsin. Whatever. Just kind of eh. Now, I like the value of Quincy Roche at 216. I thought he would probably go in round 4, so there's that. Trey Norwood at 245 in the 7th round. I figured Trey Norwood would go higher than that, so that's good. And then Presley Harvin out of Georgia Tech. He's a really, really good punter. I guess they're looking to move on from whoever their punter was last season. So, but I'm not like in love with this draft because there were some things that I thought were pretty blatant, obvious needs that need to be addressed. Particularly like just offensive tackle. Like offensive tackle in general. And you just came away with Dan Moore. Like, I don't love it. Like, I think out of all these guys, I thought Green was a great pick. He was my fourth center. He was rated basically right with Trey Hill. I think Roche was really good value. I thought Norwood was fine value, but Norwood was a fine value because I thought he would go at least a round earlier than that. Freiermuth, like, to me, that was kind of... It seemed like he was going to go in the late second, but I could have seen him dropping to the early third. Like, that's fine. Like, Harris, I just don't love first-round running back value. And while, like, I think Moore and Johnson are fine, okay, cool. Those are, solid picks. But Moore went ahead of Deontay Smith out of ECU, who I had a higher grade on. So I'm going to give this a B-. Do I like a lot of the players they drafted? Yes. I just don't necessarily... Compared to how other teams played the board... Now, the Steelers, though, they do a great job of player development. Maybe I should be a little nicer and give them a B. But, like, they draft Loudermilk, and Marvin Wilson goes undrafted. And there were some nose tackle types that are better than, like, say, Loudermilk, that would have fit the middle of Pittsburgh's scheme that went after that, and undrafted. So I don't know. I'm gonna give it a B-. I just hate knocking the Najee pick because, like, I like Najee Harris. Like, I love Najee Harris. He's my favorite running back in this draft. But he's not. I just don't like drafting him in the first round with all of the needs that you had. So let's see. From here, we're going to go. I'm going to end with I ended, I think, yesterday with the NFC East. I'm going to end with the AFC South today. Because that's the division my team's in. So from here, let's see, we hit all those teams. So from here, we're going to go into the AFC East. So let's just start with Buffalo. I was a little hard on the Rousseau pick. Friday. And I've really thought about it, and we get enamored with, like, the speed rushers and a lot of different, guys who have really great techniques and stuff for getting the quarterback. Here's the thing about the NFL, though. The ball is getting out quicker than ever. And a lot of speed rushing and move rushing takes time because the speed rusher is trying to get around the edge, and a lot of these offensive tackles are really good at keeping with them long enough for the quarterback to get out or to get the ball out. Or, simply put, these speed rushers get up the field, the quarterback just kind of subtly moves slightly up in the pocket, and now they're out of the play for a bit, and the offensive tackle has an easier job for a bit. Rousseau is a power rusher, and while his 3-cone time sucked. Not every effective pass rusher is some bendy speed rusher. Rousseau is a long-armed, powerful rusher who, while he might not be the most agile, do you know who had the fastest 10-yard split of any of the defensive linemen? And I believe this even includes Owe. It was Gregory Rousseau had the fastest 10-yard split. So let's just say he's maybe not. Now we'll take that with a little grain of salt, maybe, and let's just say he's one of the fastest players when it comes to those first 10 yards. Well, it's not like you're running 40 yards to get to the quarterback. So if we're looking at pass rushing for what it is, if you're not getting to the quarterback within 10 yards of running, well, you're not getting to the quarterback anyway. So if he can cover 10 yards the fastest, that also means he's generating a lot of explosion off the line immediately. Meaning, depending on how well he plays his leverage and how he launches off, it's possible he can get into, and because of how long levered he is, he can get on top of linemen and get into their bodies, and then use how long levered he is to maybe push, force his way, whatever. I think Rousseau was a fine pick at 30. There were guys I think that there are guys that I like a little bit better, but I was listening to Marcus Whitman and his draft grades, and I've kind of been bouncing between my own opinions on things because I also love power rushers. And it's hard for me to just see a guy get 15.5 sacks and people just use the coverage sack thing, which he did get some coverage sacks that year. But 15.5 sacks is 15.5 sacks. It's like you have to do stuff to get into those positions anyway. So I'll say this about Rousseau. Do I love the pick? Not necessarily, but I like it better than I did on Friday. Carlos Basham at pick 61 was a great pick. Because Basham's actually one of the most refined players, or most technically sound pass rushers in the draft. And he's big. He's quicker than he gets credit for from some people, like McShay. I don't think Ty McShay was it. Ty McShay talked about how he doesn't necessarily have like an elite gear. Whatever, that's fine. Basham is great all around, and I think he's going to be nice. He and Rousseau can both play kind of, and I think Basham's probably a little better equipped for this because Rousseau's he's 6'7", but he's a little slim, maybe to kick inside as much as, say, Basham. Like, Basham could play defensive tackle just straight up. Whereas Rousseau, you'd have to be very careful about what situations you had him play inside. You'd hope that were pretty sure that it was going to be a pass coming if you were going to line him up at D tackle. But Basham's really great. This guy was constantly facing double and even triple teams at Wake Forest. And he was extremely productive. If you're looking at like the Bills draft here, you almost could see what their priorities, they felt like their two biggest priorities were. We need to improve our pass rush. Done. Now we need to focus on our offensive line, which, Deion Dawkins, I think, is on a multi-year contract now. They just re-signed Darrell Williams, who played right tackle for him last year, although Williams can play guard. And they may see, it's possible they might see Doyle as a guard. Brown is one of the most intriguing prospects in the draft. I talked a lot about him. And once again, I had him rated ahead of Carmen, and I had him basically in the same range as Leatherwood. I think he has a way higher upside than Leatherwood. This dude ran an under 5-second 40, if I remember correctly, at 6'8", 311 pounds. And he just has incredible physical tools. I think he's an awesome value at 93. And they have a great offensive staff and have done a really good job coaching up. Well, they've been doing a good job coaching all their positions. That's why Buffalo's been so good. But they do a really good job of developing players. I think Brown's in a great position. Doyle, I think Doyle's a fine value in the 5th round. Marquis Stevenson, I thought was a really nice pick at 203. He played as pretty much a deep threat at Houston, so he gives them some nice depth as like a 5th receiver. I thought DeMar Hamlin could go a lot higher. Some people aren't super high on him. I know that like Marcus Whitman's kind of low on him. Mel Kiper, I think it was like he's his like 4th rated safety. I like Hamlin. I thought he would go. I wasn't as high on him as Kiper, but I wasn't as low on him as some other people, like Whitman. So 212, I thought Hamlin would be I saw him with like a 4th round value, 4th, 5th round value. You get him at 212, that's a nice pick. And then Rashad Wildgoose, I don't have an opinion on because I didn't really focus on him at all in this process. So I'm not going to knock the pick or anything. Jack Anderson, fine player. I actually kind of expected him to go earlier. I thought he'd probably be gone by the end of the 5th round. You get him at 236, I think that's solid. So they've added a lot of depth on the offensive line, added pieces for their pass rush, added to their safety depth, gave themselves a developmental player at receiver with some, field stretching upside. Fine draft from the Bills. And I kind of like the strategy of taking 2 pass rushers and then using 3 picks on your offensive line, showing what they value, which is owning the trenches and, taking multiple tickets, I guess, maybe. And, they drafted A.J. Epinesa last year as well. So they're giving themselves like a bunch of. They're taking a number of swings, and hopefully they're going to hit on one of them. So or 2 of them. So I think that's good. I think it's a good strategy. What did Kiper end up giving him, a B-? I think that's a little meh. That's a little mean, maybe. I mean, I would have rather seen him take Tron at 30 than Russo. So I guess I'll give it a B. Because really, outside of like Basham, which Basham just kind of went around where I thought he would. Brown went. I'm not surprised he fell to 93, but I liked him better than like that draft slot, so that's great. And then Hamlin I like better than that draft slot. Really, they only got, to me, plus value on 2 of these picks, so I'll give them a B. I think they did a solid job of the draft. Why am I going all the way to the top? I'm a moron. Okay, so who did I just go over? Okay, that was Buffalo. Well, you know what? Here's Miami. We'll get into Miami real quick. So he gave them an A. I loved the way they ran their draft. I mean, I would have rather seen them take Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, but to me, what that signals is Waddle's the future. Fuller is going to help them this year, and then probably be gone. Jaylen Phillips was one of the best picks of the draft. This guy has elite pass rusher written all over him, and they're just down the street from where Phillips was this past year. They might have more information and better information on Phillips than any other team in the league. So I love that. Javon Holland ended up being the first safety taken, and I'm fine with that. I think Holland's a great all-around player, and I think how great he was in 2019 was a little bit forgotten about this past year, and the Pac-12 was just kind of forgotten about a lot this year because of how their season went, because of how their conference mishandled everything. But I think that was a solid pick. Love Eichenberg at 42. I would have probably loved more if they had gotten Tevin Jenkins, but it is what it is. But they upgraded their safety position. Then they get a starting caliber right tackle in Eichenberg. Then you get Hunter Long, who can be their inline traditional starting tight end and be a really good one at 81. Gesicki is a move tight end, so this helps them, like, if they want to run some 2 tight end sets. I think Long was a really good pick for them. They took a flyer on UMass offensive tackle Larmel Coleman. I think that was actually really good value at 231. Coleman was really dominant against that level of competition and is actually a pretty good development player. And then you've got Jared Dokes, running back out of Cincinnati. I kind of expected him to go undrafted, but I'm not going to hate on them for spending pick 244 on a player that, because most players that are going there could have gone undrafted as well. I mean, there are players that I wish, or that went undrafted that they should have drafted, so I guess that kind of hurts. But it kind of signals, I guess, that they're okay with, and the way this draft went, I guess they're okay with their running back room as it is. So, but all in all, I mean, Waddle was a fine pick. Phillips was a home run A+ for me. Holland is an A. Eichenberg's an A+. Long is an A for me. I'm going to give the Coleman pick a B+ for where they got him. Like, if I'm just going to give out some letter grades. So, all in all, I think Miami deserves an A for this one. I think Kiper nailed it. And then we'll just go to the Jets, because they're also right here. And, of course, Zach Wilson went 2. I'm not, like, a huge fan of their trade-up from 23 to 14, personally. I don't love the value there, if I'm being honest. Well, I had Elijah Vera Tucker going in this range, but when you look at who was available at 23, they could have drafted Tevin Jenkins and kicked George Fant inside to guard. Instead, I guess they're going to go with a position battle between Fant and former second-round pick Chuma Udoga. I can't remember if he was a second-rounder last year or the year before, if it was in 2020. I think he was in 2019. But, yeah. But Vera Tucker's going to be an awesome guard. I think he's going to be a great player. Love getting Elijah Moore at 34. Thought he was a first-round player. Then the issue is because you traded up for Elijah Vera Tucker, you miss out on some picks. You had to give up a third rounder there. Then you take, and like I said, I love the Michael Carter pick at 107. I think that was great value. I really expected him to go in the third round. I don't understand Jamien Sherwood unless you're going to play him as a linebacker, but even then, like, there were better linebackers available, even at 146 in the fifth round. Sherwood ran like a 4.7 640, like 40 times on everything, but like the dude is slow and his tape's not great either. I mean, he tackles fine, but like I don't see the upside. Whereas like Michael Carter, the second out of Duke, he's got better range. I mean, he's not amazing either. And there were some safeties that went later, including Hamza Nasir-Ladin, who I wasn't like a huge fan of, but I expected him to go before pick 186. I thought he'd go rounds 4 or 5. I have him ahead of both of those guys. Jason Pinnock of Pittsburgh, whatever. Then you've got Brandon Eichels of Kentucky, who I had rated ahead of Pinnock. And then Jonathan Marshall out of Arkansas, who went at 207. That was fine. I love the Wilson pick. I think Wilson is an extremely special talent. And in all honesty, as high as we all had Sam Darnold, I would probably take Wilson over, or I have a higher grade on Wilson than I had on Darnold coming out, even though I like Darnold a lot coming out, and I still believe in Darnold. I like Elijah Vera Tucker. I just don't like the trade up for him necessarily. Love the Elijah Moore pick. Love the Michael Carter pick. Everything else, though, kind of eh. Although the Hamza pick definitely got good value there, and Eichels was fine. Marshall was fine. I'm gonna go with Kiper here, and I'm gonna give it an A-. Because what they did is they drafted a quarterback, and then you look, Tucker and Moore and Carter, all those things are going to help Wilson. Carter can catch the ball in the backfield, and he improves their running back group in general. Tucker will improve the run game and the pass game from the guard position. Moore is gives him an electric playmaker out of the slot to go with the kind of big physical outside guys they have in Corey Davis and is it Desmond Mims? Denzel Mims out of Baylor, who they drafted last year. He missed a lot of last year to injury. But their day 3 was just, after Carter, was just kind of, like, whatever. And then the other team, that would be New England. And I think that he's got New England kind of low. Because I don't think he put New England in the B pluses. No, he didn't. He's in the long string of Bs. Or he put them, New England in the long string of teams with a B. So, first off, New England gets an A+ for waiting and getting Mac Jones without moving up. He is exactly what they want. Then they traded up for Christian Barmore. And I was on Twitter, and some Cincinnati Bengals fan was talking about how the Cincinnati Bengals won the draft because of that trade down. And I was like, New England traded up for a guy that I had a first-round grade on, and they gave up a couple piddly mid-round picks to get an elite talent at a position that I believed they needed. Everybody needs a potentially elite interior disruptor like Barmore, but while that wasn't one of the big needs that Kiper had listed for the Patriots, I thought Barmore is a piece that will greatly improve their defense, especially if he develops. So I thought that was great. They get Ronnie Perkins at pick 96, which is just crazy that he fell that far. And then I love Ramondre Stevenson at 120. He was one of my favorite guys that I thought would go on day 3 at the running back position. He's big, he's strong, but he also can contribute in the passing game. Considering Sony Michel's injury history and inability to stay healthy for a full season, and Damian Harris is fine, but you really need more. As much as they run the ball, you need multiple running backs, multiple quality running backs. I think Stevenson is exactly what they want. Well, obviously it was what they wanted there, but is exactly what they need. And then Cam McGrone at 177 was nice. And the way that they're probably going to use him, they're probably not going to ask him to do as much coverage stuff. They're going to allow him to blitz, and they're going to let him focus on playing the run. I actually think that that's going to be a really good pick for them there. And then I like Josh Bledsoe at 188. He's got really good ball skills at safety. William Shervin's fine. Trey Nixon is fine. The one knock is I really expect them to draft a receiver at some point. But at the same time, this is probably good because the Patriots historically don't draft receivers that well. So maybe Bill Belichick's like, you know what? I'm just not going to waste a pick on something that apparently we're not good at evaluating. Nixon does have a lot of speed, so he could develop into a Nelson Aguilar, replacement, because Aguilar's only on a 2-year deal, and his deal looks like one that very well could be one that's doomed to be cut after all the guaranteed money is gone after the first season. So, but on the strength of Jones, the Barmore trade up, Perkins, Stevenson, McGrone, I like the value for Bledsoe. To me, this is an A. The Broncos got dinged a little by Kiper for passing on Justin Fields and taking Surtain, even though that was still a great value pick. And since they are sold, or they are running in this, they want Drew Lock. They're giving Drew Lock the opportunity. They believe he can be their guy. You knock them knock them down into the B's range. But the Patriots wait, and then get that quarterback of the future who fits everything the Patriots want out of their quarterback. You give him a B. I thought the Patriots did a great job simply for getting Jones. And yeah, they did trade up for Barmore, but I think that was a really good move. This doesn't even necessarily look like in ways, this doesn't look like a Belichick draft. Because you see a quarterback in the first round. They made a big move up to get a falling elite prospect in Barmore. But then they got a really good high energy pass rusher in the third round. Well, that's kind of a Belichick pick. They drafted a running back in round 3 or 4. That's pretty Belichick. They do that basically every year. So, and then, like I said, so I'm going to give him an A. And yeah, so that's the entire AFC East. So we're going to get into the final division that we're going to and end off the draft grades. AFC South, baby. We will end with my Tennessee Titans and my thoughts on that, or on their draft last. So let's get the joke out of the way quickly. So we have Houston, and because of trades, Houston doesn't have didn't have first or second round picks. Their first pick, they take Davis Mills, which maybe is a sign they think that Watson or that they're going to move on from Watson, whatever. To me, it's just a wasted pick because I don't think he's going to amount to anything anyway. I think they're going to be back at the quarterback market next year anyway. If Watson is gone, mark my words. Nico Collins, though, at 89, really good value. Like that pick. Getting Brevin Jordan at 147 in the 5th round was incredibly great value. I actually like Garrett Wallow out of TCU at 170. I think that was a solid pick. Roy Lopez, he's a, classic 6th, 7th, maybe, who knows. Just like a bland prospect, whatever. Kuiper gave him a B-. Like I said, I really like the Collins and Jordan value. You have to factor in who these picks are gone because of, and that's because of getting Laramie Tunsil. And you definitely want a top-shelf left tackle like Tunsil. But I don't really care for the Mills pick. So I'm going to give him a C+ because, I'll give him a B-. It's like you got Tunsil. I like the Collins and Jordan stuff. And I like the Wallow pick. I think they did okay with what picks they had. You just don't ever want to not have. You just don't ever want to be without that many draft picks, and be as bad as they were last year. Like if they weren't a dumpster fire, that wouldn't be a problem. Good gracious. I've totally gone the wrong way here. Because I think literally all the AFC South teams are like below them. I might have passed the Jaguars already, actually, but I almost want to say he gave them a bad grade because of the ETN going the first round. Kuiper does not like does not like first round running backs at all. He's probably harsher against it than I am. So, okay, so let's go with Indy. Yeah, I needed to go down. So the Colts Kuiper did not like the Colts draft. Kwity Paye, I thought them getting him at 21 was okay, but I'm not a huge Paye fan. I think he has huge bust potential. Dayo Odenigbo, I didn't think he'd go in the 2nd round, to be honest. I thought he might go at the end of the 3rd, so that's not great value. Kyle Granson out of SMU actually is a pretty athletic and interesting tight end. I figured he'd go in the 5th. I'm okay with him going in at round 4. I think I'll give that a B. And the Colts develop tight ends really well. So Sean Davis, there was a run on safeties. He's okay. And he's different than, say, a Hamza, Nasir Ladine, or whatever, but there are guys who went, like, later at the safety position I like better than Davis, so I'm not thrilled on that one. Sam Ellenger at 218. You drafted Jacob Eason last year, and Ellinger's not very accurate, and he's not an amazing athlete. I didn't think Ellenger would get drafted. I do like Mike Strachan. He is an incredible athlete with incredible size. He has amazing tools, amazing upside. Like, that's exactly the kind of thing you want to do in the 7th round. I give that an A+. And Will Fries was a fine choice, but maybe you should have gone offensive tackle earlier. And that's my issue with their draft is you drafted Paye when you could have gotten Darrisaw, Jenkins, or any of the other offensive tackles that went between 21 and 54. And then when you took Odeyimbo, Jalen Mayfield was on the board. Spencer Brown was on the board. Heck, when they took Granson, Deontay Smith was on the board. So, even though I like the Granson pick. So, out of this, because of where everyone expected him to go, the value on Paye from that's where he was probably going to go was somewhere in this range. You know, from that view, I'm just not as high on Paye as other people. So, I'm okay with it, but Odeyingbo was just a reach. Davis was a bit of a reach. Ellenger, to me, you wasted a draft pick. I'm going to go with Kiper and give him a C+, but maybe we should give Chris Ballard the benefit of the doubt. But I didn't love the Colts draft at all. I know there's my Titans, but I'm going to save them for last. Let's see. I want to say Jacksonville was in the Bs. Nope. B+. Oh, no, there they are. There's the B. Okay. So, Jacksonville, of course, Trevor Lawrence, there's nothing to say. Everyone knew he was going number 1, easy pick. They draft Etienne at 25. The thing is, just last year, y'all get James Robinson. Was he undrafted free agent or 7th round pick? Either way, and he was a bell cow and he was great. I get he's not explosive and he doesn't have Etienne's he doesn't have his top end speed, whatever. But Robinson showed that he was a really good receiver out of the backfield. To me, I just don't like the value when you have a lot of needs that you need to hit in, rebuilding this team. Did like Tyson Campbell at 33, though. Really good pick. Walker Little at 45. I was one of the people that for a while forgot about Walker Little because he was injured in 2019, I think it was. And then, ACL in 2019. And then he sat out 2020. He was a COVID opt-out, and he decided he wasn't going to play at all. He was just going to work on continuing to get in peak physical shape and work on tape and do whatever. Before that, this guy was a consensus elite tackle prospect, and he still is. I'm sure that Urban Meyer tried to recruit Walker Little. So I think that was a really good pick. Love Andre Sisco at 65. That was a great pick. They needed a safety, and they got the best center fielding safety, in my opinion, in this draft. Then you've got Jay Tufele. They got at 106. Really good value for Tufele there. They needed him to add to their defensive line, their defensive interior. They got another developmental pass rusher in Jordan Smith from UAB, who has really great tools at 121. I like that. Luke Farrell. If there's one knock on this draft, it's that they didn't get a tight end until Luke Farrell. And Luke Farrell, he was, Urban Meyer's familiar with him from Ohio State. He's more of a blocking tight end, but he can be a underneath, release valve tight end. And then Jalen Camp is actually a pretty high upside wide receiver from Georgia Tech. Another one of those guys that went receivers from Georgia Tech that never got to showcase anything because of how they play. Even though they kind of ditched the option offense, he still didn't really get to show what he was capable of. He has a chance to develop into something at the next level. We'll see if he gets a chance, but he's got tools, so he's a nice pick at 209. I thought that was fine. With that being said, I'm looking at this, and Lawrence is going to start, and, we all expect him to be great. ETN is, at the very least, they have Robinson, they have Carlos Hyde there, but ETN's really good. He's probably going to earn at least, he'll probably be their main third down back and could end up by the end of the year being 50-50 or something on carries, potentially with Robinson, or maybe, let's say Robinson gets 60% of the carries. I could see ETN getting 30% and Hyde getting 10 or something like that. He's going to contribute. Campbell could end up starting this year. Walker Little could push Cam Robinson inside to guard. Andre Cisco probably will end up starting. Tufele should play a role for sure. We'll see about Smith. Farrell's going to play. Like I said, I don't love the ETN or drafting the running back in the first round value. But I'm still giving this a B+. So even if Lawrence, it's anybody could have made that pick. But yeah. And then we'll go down and we will talk about my Titans. And I think Titans fans need to chill. Titans fans just need to chill. I saw a lot of people during the draft being upset about us trading down and saying, we're trading down and then the teams that are trading up are taking the players that we need to be picking. And it's because, everybody's wanting a receiver. Everybody's wanting a receiver. And I get it. And at first, I wasn't super excited about Farley because I get the talent. I know the talent, and we've talked about it, and I was kind of skeptical. I've had a lot of people tell me that back injury, it wasn't two separate flare-ups. These both happened at the same time, and one was worse than the other, and they thought the other might fix itself, so they only performed that surgery on the one disc, and then he's come back and he's had to do it, or he had to get it done to the other disc. They're saying that this likely will never flare up again. And that's the most likely thing to happen. So with that being said, we might have gotten the best man cover corner in this draft, which is great. Then Dylan Radins at 53. I didn't expect Radins to last this long at all. That's great. I love it. And then considering Rashawn Evans has been injured and not amazing when he has been healthy, and Jayon Brown we just brought back on a 1-year contract, getting Monty Rice at pick 92 I think was awesome. I love Monty Rice. I think that's great for us. And getting Elijah Molden at pick 100, we got probably the best pure slot corner in the draft at pick 100. I think that's awesome. Our biggest weakness last year was our cornerback group because of injuries and other stuff. And I think we have upgraded that for the future. And Des Fitzpatrick is not... I think he's a fine pick here. He's not... Which I believe Simi Fehoko was still on the board, and he would have been a higher upside pick, but Fitzpatrick is probably better and a little more polished right now. Fitzpatrick's not like some amazing receiver, but he kind of reminds me of a slightly less athletic Darius Slayton. Slayton's been great for the Giants since being a 5th-round pick. Fitzpatrick is great at setting up his slants, and he's got really good speed in straight lines. Doesn't have like a ton of wiggle, but he's also long. He's good on fades. Like, there are several. He hasn't run like the entire route tree, but there are several different routes at multiple different levels of the field that he is really comfortable and pretty good at running. So I'm cool with it. And he kind of fits the type of receiver we needed anyway. Then we got Rashad Weaver at 135, and I think that's great value because I thought he was going to go like late 3rd or at the very top of day 3 or at the very top of the round 4. So getting him at towards the back end of round 4, nice value. And Weaver was extremely productive in college. I think that was a good pick. Racey McMath, I'm not super excited about, but this dude did run he ran in the 4.3s in the 40, I think. It was like a 4.34 or a 4.36. And everybody was like, what? And LSU fans were like, yeah, the dude's actually really fast. It didn't show up a ton on tape, and he was really stiff. He did not look good at the Senior Bowl in workouts. Like, he didn't look like anything, but I'm going to say that we're primarily drafting him for special teams reasons, and in that regard, he's a great gunner on special teams. And at the very least, he's tall and really fast and does have some skills down the field, so if we just put him on the field to clear out for guys to run stuff underneath, and occasionally he gets the ball downfield, he actually does have the ability to elevate and go up and get the ball and outrun certain corners. Like, he does have some upside. And then Brady Brees was an awesome value at 215. This guy's probably one of the 10 best safeties in this draft class. And this guy showed out a lot in certain games on tape. Like, he has like all-around ability at safety. So I'm actually pretty cool with this class. Because Farley, before the back thing, was... I mean, it was like, it's him and Patrick Surtain at the top of the class. Dylan Radins, I thought he was a late first-round guy. Late first, early second. We got him at 53. We got him later. I didn't think he would last this long. Monty Rice, love it at the end of the 3rd round. Elijah Molden, too. I thought Elijah Molden probably was going to go in the late 2nd round. So, I don't know. I'm down with it. Des Fitzpatrick, I thought would go rounds 4 or 5. Rashad Weaver, I thought was what did I have him ranked? 101 on my board, and he went 135. Maybe he was 103 on my board. McMath has like upside, and at least has a use as a special teams player. And then Brady Brees, like, we just have a ton of safety depth. I can't remember if we cut Kenny Vaccaro or not, but I love Amani Hooker. Well, I mean, Kevin Beard is amazing. I love Amani Hooker. I really like Dane Cruikshank. Hopefully he's good coming back from injury. And then Brady Brees is a nice, like, fourth safety with upside. So I actually think I'm going to give us a B+. Maybe I'm being too nice. And usually I'm harsher on the Titans draft than I am everyone else's, but we got a lot of guys that I like. Like, Raduns was one of the guys that I love. Monty Rice was one of my guys that I loved. Rashad Weaver is a guy that I really, really liked. So, anyway, with that being said, that is my draft grades. We're coming up at the end of the show. Since it's May the 4th, you know what? I'll do it. I'm going to give my Star Wars rant. It's not going to be as long as maybe it was going to be earlier. But let's you know what? Let me take a drink first. So, to preface this, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Love me some Star Wars. At least I did. Of course, I remember being an old kid. I was like 4 or 5 when I watched the original trilogy with my dad for the first time. I want to say like 5. And fell in love with it. It was so cool. Luke was, just this, teenager who, I want to say he was like, 18? Who gets swept up into this adventure, whoops, sorry. Just this unassuming, teenager who just wants to go pick up some, power converters or whatever. Annoyed with having to do chores. And then he just stumbles across some droids and boom, adventure. Those first 3 films are just so great. And you see, like, this real character development. Like, you see Luke's, at different points struggling with training, like learning how to, sense blaster fire and deflect it with his lightsaber. You see him, bravely step up throughout, like, that first movie, even though he's kind of, like, scared or whatever. And then you get to the end of A New Hope, and of course we've also come across Han Solo. Han's gonna leave. He helped smuggle them off of, like, whatever it was. He helps get Ben and Luke off of Tatooine, and they just so happen to end up caught on the Death Star, where Princess Leia is being kept. And, of course, they all, through hijinks and whatnot, are able to get Leia out. But, of course, we all know what happens with Ben and whatnot. I'm sorry I'm telling the whole story of Star Wars, but this is, like, just a big thing. Is, like, you see this development from Han, though, because Han, they get to Yavin, and Han's like, okay, see y'all, taking my money, taking my reward, and I'm getting out of here. Like, I don't want to die, y'all have fun. But you see Luke, who, my parents kind of described as a whiny character, which is interesting to me. You see him go, and basically say, I'm not just going to abandon these people. And, this guy's never, really flown, but he's going to pilot an X-Wing. And it's just kind of crazy. And so the battle, ensues and whatnot. And Luke's going to make that run, that trench run. and his wingmen are going down, and things aren't looking great. And then what happens? Han Solo comes flying in out of nowhere in the Millennium Falcon, taking out TIE fighters, clearing the heat, clearing the path, and Luke's able to eventually take the shot that blows up the Death Star. Like, you see Han, he's like, there is good in him. He's not this scoundrel. He's really a good guy at heart who could not help himself but do the right thing when it mattered. And that resonated with me as a little bitty kid, and resonated with me growing up. Like, this idea of, or, that kind of stuff. And so I love the movies. Empire Strikes Back is out of the three, the best of the three. And it's not like these movies were like incredibly written or anything, but it was a beautiful universe that was created. And I'm actually pretty okay with the prequel movies, especially the second and third movies. You can make fun of Hayden Christensen's acting all you want, but actually, if you really think about it and how, like, Sith, what would cause a fall of the dark side and what would make the most powerful Sith Lord, just read their creed. Seriously, the most powerful Sith Lord would be the most angsty emo kid that you went to high school with. Seriously. Especially one that is deluded and has delusions of grandeur or whatever. You get like the emo kid who also, has massive ego. Whew. There's your guy. And in that regard, Hayden Christensen did actually pretty well, because what's the one thing he can do pretty freaking well as an actor? Scream and look mad, angry, or upset. It worked. Like, maybe for a lot of the rest of the films, like, it didn't, but, like, in those moments, like, it actually kind of makes sense to me. That I actually think Hayden Christensen accidentally did a good job in that regard. But anyway, I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. I've read pretty much all of the extended universe novels, like the Legends canon novels, that go from just leading up to kind of like the books that kind of led up to and told stories kind of leading up to the prequel trilogy of movies, and everything from that time period to the last stuff they released of the Legends canon. And I read, if I didn't read the comics, I read synopsises or listened to the stories or whatever. Obviously, going blind and whatnot, comics became really hard to read, and of course books, all that stuff became impossible to read. So some of the stuff I've done on audio, but I know pretty much all of the story from, that point. And I've read a lot of the stuff, and of course I read a lot of the Old Republic stuff. I played all the like Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. I've read a ton of the lore, and familiar with a lot of the stories from like the Ancient Republic and that kind of stuff as well. So really, it's like I went really in deep with the Star Wars universe. And I was super excited for the new movies. I was super excited that Luke and Leia and Han were going to be in it. But, like the original, should I say, having the original cast around. But at the same time, they were deviating from the canon that I had, that was mine. Because this used to be the EU, not the Legends canon. Those books used to be canon. And there were awesome characters that are better than the ones they decided to make for these movies. Not to mention, the first movie, I mean, it was basically New Hope over again, but Force Awakens was solid. And then The Last Jedi happened. And that movie was terrible. There are things about the movie that were fine, but they created a bunch of new characters. Basically, anything that was set up in The Force Awakens, they basically decided to just get rid of, or say it, or basically meant it meant nothing. And I don't know if anyone has ever, if you're familiar with the idea of Chekhov's gun, the concept of Chekhov's gun. Chekhov was a Russian playwright, and what he would do is he would foreshadow things by putting objects in the background or things that would come into play later and have them be in the background of scenes or hinted at early on. So it's a type of visualized foreshadowing of there would be a gun on the mantelpiece throughout scenes, like specifically in this place. Later on in the movie, or in like his plays, someone was going to use that gun. So you have all these things that get set up in Force Awakens, like the question of Rey's parentage, and of course these ties to the Skywalkers in particular. Among other things. I mean, I don't want to just list everything. But basically, all that's thrown out in the window in The Last Jedi. We just, kill Admiral Akbar off screen, or at the beginning of the movie. No big deal. We just a passing mention of it. And it's like, what? Because in the extended universe, Admiral Akbar is a key figure, like, post this. Like, he's a very important figure in the Republic. And there's just a bunch of characters that we don't get because of this. There's no Kyle Katarn. Kyle Katarn doesn't exist. He's the best, and he's one of the best original characters. Well, he's out of original characters that came out of the video games, you have because you have the Old Republic stories, like you have Revan and Malak and your character from Knights of the Republic 2. You have Traya, Darth Traya from that game. And of course, the mention of Exar Kun and some other older lore, in those. But Kyle Katarn was arguably the coolest and best character. Him and Revan are the two iconic characters to come out of the video game universe. And Katarn became a huge part of the books as well because of it. And it just kind of stinks that all these characters were wiped away. And we end up getting something that wasn't as good. Characters that weren't as fleshed out. One of my biggest issues is, look at what happens to Luke the entire first trilogy. He doesn't know anything in the first movie. He's pretty much, it's he has of course, moments of triumph, being the gunner in the Millennium Falcon, basically getting Leia to the Millennium Falcon, during that escape. And of course, the trench run. But he also struggled at times because he wasn't, he's struggling training with the lightsaber. He can't even use that in the first movie. I mean, yeah, he can't use the Force in the first movie. He doesn't do any lightsaber battling. You look at the second movie. You get into Empire Strikes Back. He goes and seeks out Yoda on Dagobah. He does some training, but he kind of falls flat on his face at the beginning there too. Eventually, he gets there, but then he gets spooked by that vision, and he realizes that his friends are going to a trap on Cloud City, even though really it's truly a trap for him. And he disregards Yoda, and he's like, I'll be back. Which, of course, didn't matter because Yoda dies. But Luke goes there and gets his butt handed to him. They all get wrecked. And then Lando, who was the one who thought he was going to benefit from this, also basically gets double-crossed by Vader. Big shock. And of course, Luke has that huge revelation about his parentage, like where he actually comes from. And then you get to the third movie, or, Luke, though, decides, you know what? I'm not joining you. I'm just letting go of this. And he lets go and he falls down and then ends up saved by the Millennium Falcon. And of course, the movie ends with him and Leia on the bridge and him getting like his new hand because his hand was cut off by his father, who had Dooku had done that to him, which we find out later, Dooku cut Anakin's hand off in the second movie of a trilogy. Oh, goodness. But Luke gets his butt handed to him pretty much the entire second movie. Like, he makes some progress, but ends up, he was hasty. Maybe he should have been more patient. And then we get to Return of the Jedi, and it starts off, and you see this Luke who looks totally different. But, especially if you look at the prequels, it's kind of interesting, He's in all black. He's got himself a new lightsaber. And he's confident. And he's using... It's like, oh, he can use the mind trick. He's confident with the saber and his force abilities. Like, this guy's a force to be reckoned with. Okay, I see you. Which I forgot, I left out the whole Hoth thing at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. Because, obviously he downs the walker, but of course, they have to escape Hoth. Like, they lost. But, and that's the fifth movie. They're on the run, they're losing. Like, they had this big triumph, but in A New Hope, but, like, hey, guys, that was a battle. The war ain't over, and you're still outmatched. And then you get to Return of the Jedi, and, he ends up making this big rescue of Han and Leia and Chewie. It didn't totally go well at first, but, he's able to improv his way out of it. Well, him and Han. But, man, I'm telling the story of Star Wars rather than going on my rant. But I get this is the point. Like, I'm outlining this picture of why the new trilogy is bad compared to the originals. Luke goes through all this growth as a character, and then at the end of the movie, he has to confront his father and the Emperor. At the very least, he chooses to. Because obviously, as long as they're still in the picture, they're just going to build another Death Star because they're doing it right then. He entrusts Han and Lando and the gang to deal with, all that. He's confronting his father. He's confronting the Emperor. And he doesn't give in to his anger. He eventually appeals to his father's goodness. And he is willing to get tortured. He's willing... I mean, obviously, he's like, you know what? I'm not fighting anymore. Dad, you make your choice. It's me or it's the Emperor. Because I'm not joining the Emperor. And Anakin does the right thing. And they have this moment. And Anakin's like, son, my time is over. Basically, and tells him to get out of here. Like, Anakin, you know, obviously doesn't want to slow his son down, but I think for himself, like, he doesn't want to go on living this way. And probably doesn't feel like he can be reconciled either. But, you know, Luke redeems his father, and they win, and it's awesome. And then you have all these books that go into, and of course, Luke has struggles. Luke does at a point like fall or almost fall to the dark side. Leia pulls him back. You know, they all, of course, Han and Leia get married and have children. Luke eventually gets married and has children. And my favorite character in all of Star Wars, or at least to me, arguably the most compelling character in all of Star Wars, comes out of the expanded universe. And it's Jacen Solo, the son of Han and Leia. And of course, intertwined with that is his sister Jaina Solo. They're twins. He has one of the coolest rises and falls in all of it, to me, and just in literature in general. Like, he's just an awesome character. And we lose all of this for a trilogy where Rey is just successful at everything. All the failure comes from other people. Like, she figures out how to do the Jedi mind trick in the first movie. Well, she immediately is able to fly the Millennium Falcon like a boss. Trying to get back because I started somewhere, went backward, now I'm going forward. I mean, she's able to, with no training whatsoever, basically, go toe-to-toe with Kylo and injure him. And basically have the upper hand in that fight. Like, he's the one who gets bailed out, really, by the environment stuff. So she kicks butt the entire first movie. The second movie. Once again, what real struggle did she have in the second movie other than dealing with this, you know, depressed and angry Luke Skywalker? Like, just the bitter old hermit, and dealing with this connection with Kylo. But what happens at the end of the movie? You know, Luke has this epic moment, and then just dies, because I guess it just took too much energy to do whatever he did. But the movie ends with, and of course, and I'm just going with Rey. It would take me an hour to go through everything wrong with The Last Jedi. So I'm just going to dodge all that. Like, Rey's triumphant in the end. She's this huge force feat that, like, Luke lifted, you know, an X-Wing. out of a swamp under no duress. She lifts like all these rocks and stuff, and like, like she never struggles. She never gets her butt whooped. And that's after, of course, because I cannot forget like the scene like up before that, which there was that awesome fight with her and Kylo versus like Snoke and all the, robots or whatever. And yeah, it's like to a degree, like obviously Snoke kind of has the upper hand, but for the most part, that went pretty much according to her plan anyway. Like, Rey can't fail. Like, Rey cannot actually take an L in the movies. She just always, like, everything always works out successfully for Rey. And then the third movie, which in some ways is, in a lot of ways is better than The Last Jedi. But because of just how things have gone, it's still not great. Although I love all the character development with Kylo Ren. Actually, that's the best part of all the movies, really, is his development as a character. Just, we find out, and that's the other thing, that was set up in the first movie. The second movie, Rey's, your parents were nobodies. Which, of course, ended up not being true, but who knows what the original plan was, because Rian Johnson ruined everything with the second movie. Abrams, or whatever, of course we find out, and spoiler alert here, Rey's actually, then you have their book releases also for these movies, and they retcon certain things, or they clarify things in the movies, and change them to make the official things whatever's in the book. So they basically explained in the movies that she is the granddaughter of Palpatine, but I don't know if we're sure which of her parents is like the child of Palpatine or whatever. And then the books, the book version of the last, or of Rise of Skywalker, of course, we find out in the movie that she's a Palpatine. Well, basically, Palpatine was trying to make a bunch of Force clones of himself, or like a bunch of clones of himself, and one of them was a failure who didn't have any Force abilities, and was going to be executed, but was able to escape. And I think like whatever, the mother was whoever helped him escape or whatever, and they had a child, and that's Rey. And of course, he didn't actually have any Force abilities himself, but apparently was able to pass down, that Palpatine lineage in the Force or whatever. And so technically she's like the Emperor's granddaughter, but in a way she's actually like his daughter. It's just weird. And it's just crazy. Like, you want to talk about just the stakes getting upped. Okay, we had Death Planet rather than Death Star. Which, the Star Killer base, it kills the star, or causes the star of the star system to explode, or I think is what happens, which then destroys all the planets, or it just can destroy an entire star system, let's just put it that way, and all the planets in it. So now, instead, for the third movie, the big thing is, actually there's this secret Sith planet, and Palpatine, or some clone of Palpatine, or whatever, is on this planet, and there's this slave race that's totally enslaved to the Sith, and all they've been doing is just building a bunch of like high-tech weaponry. So we have all the biggest Star Destroyers ever, and they all have cannons equal in power to the Death Star. So instead of having like a giant Death Star, you have something a little more maneuverable that can be moved into places quicker, and it's more powerfully armed. Like, this is just ridiculous. And of course, they're able to, because of how the planet works and gravity and just other stuff, like, they're able to, of course, win. But once again, in the third movie, Rey never, like, it makes sense that she wins in the end. Or whatever. The thing is, she's never really down for long. It feels like everything just comes naturally. Everything just works. Everything works. Like, because you look at, like, even Anakin in the prequel trilogy, like, he's like a kid who's in slavery. Like, yeah, he was able to win the pod racing race, but some stuff had to happen, and that was still pretty difficult. He had to overcome adversity during that. He wasn't just doing necessarily amazing Force stuff from the beginning. It seemed like, well, he autopiloted that spaceship, or that space fighter and whatnot. But R2 was in it, and R2 probably did a lot of that himself because R2's freaking great. In the second movie, like, Anakin, loses his mom, and then goes on that genocidal rampage of that whole Tusken Raider community. Like, men, women, and children. Like, women and children. Which you can understand, but at the same time, it's like, that's kind of dark. He gets captured, trying to rescue, he and Padme get captured trying to rescue Obi-Wan. That worked out swimmingly. Then he and Obi-Wan go and fight Dooku, and they get beat, and he loses a hand. Like, Anakin really struggles. And in the third movie, like, Anakin, he and Kenobi succeed in the first kind of act of the movie, rescuing Palpatine, but then he just straight executes Dooku, which, Kenobi's, like, was not happy with, obviously. Like, he takes vengeance. Anakin spends the whole movie, on the fall, but also, like, he kills Mace Windu, like, he kills a bunch of younglings, like, he does a bunch of bad stuff, but, he's winning. But then what happens to Anakin at the end? He lets his ego and his pride get the best of him in the worst way possible. And if it wasn't for Palpatine and space science, and I guess his hatred keeping him alive or long enough to be, put into that suit by Palpatine, like, he lost to Kenobi there, like, full stop. Rey just never had those moments, really. It just, to me, like, we just saw, like, to me it was like a superhero with a bunch of mortals around, really. I don't know. And I know there are people who probably disagree with that, but that's my... And they've just done a bunch of other stuff, like, a lot of the new stuff they're putting out, and they ruined Finn. Finn, during the first movie, I mean, obviously he's Force sensitive. They just leave him as a Force sensitive. By the third movie, like, the third movie, like, the worst part about the third movie was what they did to his character. It's really frustrating how they neutered his character. The Rose Tico thing in Last Jedi was bad. Whoever the general or admiral was, who was supposed to be the super genius, the purple-haired chick, did not prove to be a great leader. Yes, that plan was actually good, but a great leader knows who's under their command and understands how to motivate and get the best out of those people. She did everything she could to antagonize and discourage Poe from falling in line, which ended up jeopardizing that plan. A plan that actually a good general or admiral would have known Poe would have been all for and would have been an asset to. It's just, that's the kind of just dumb writing to insert characters. Well, and even if you do insert characters, you have to insert them, like, make good characters. And you don't, and they failed. And then all the stuff they're doing with, like, dismissing the Legends canon. Like, well, Kathleen Kennedy, when she said, well, it's not like the MCU where we have all these books or, like, a bunch of comics and books to work off of. Which showed that she apparently didn't she either forgot about or didn't care about the Legends canon or didn't know anything about it, didn't read any of that stuff. Maybe she was saying that we're not allowed to reach from that stuff, but it's just frustrating. Star Wars was cool, and now you see some of the just crap they're also trying to do with it, with like the High Republic woke crap. That's just terrible. I mean, it's just awful. And you see what they did. They had something good going in The Mandalorian, and they did what they could, or they fired someone for a stupid reason. It's like all these people care more about politics than actually making good stories. Like, that's the problem. I don't know. We had something great, and you decided to replace that with something, and you didn't make something that's as good, and that's why people will have problems with it. And I don't want to. And to be honest, I don't care about the opinion. I've heard the opinions, and I've heard the takes of people who think this stuff is really good. To me, they're wrong. I just disagree, and the vast majority of people are on my side of the fence. And I don't really care at this point about necessarily taking back Star Wars like some of my friends have talked about, because Disney still owns it. I don't trust Disney. I know what Disney wants to do with all their properties because I see them do it. Just because Jon Favreau's in charge now doesn't mean that Star Wars is going to go in a non-woke direction or isn't going to get ruined by that kind of stuff. Like, I'm okay with diverse characters. I'm okay with with having, like, women, people of color, aliens, just whatever in, like, leading roles and stuff. I just want them to be written well and not be very blatant token characters and Mary Sue's and people who just, like, I want compelling characters. That's it. And for the most part, we didn't get that from these movies. And that's the problem. To me, the best and most fleshed out characters from, like, the Disney era of Star Wars have come from, are Poe Dameron, I'm going to go counter with most people and say that actually I thought Solo was great, and I thought they did an awesome job of portraying a young Han Solo. Especially when you think about Solo and what he did during the prequel trilogy. Some low-life scoundrel who doesn't care about anyone else wouldn't have made the decisions he made in the first movie if he was really a low-life scoundrel. I thought Solo did a good job of showing that this is a scrapper with a great heart, and it kind of shows like what caused him to become like the way he was. I don't know. It's like, and I was excited to see like what was going to come after that, and we didn't get it because people threw a tantrum about Solo because they were mad about The Last Jedi. That's all that was, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think people really gave Solo a chance. Even people who watched it, I don't think people actually gave Solo a chance. Because I gave The Last Jedi a chance. Like, I wasn't like necessarily upset when the movie ended. Like, it was entertaining. There were things that I liked, but there was a lot of stuff that I didn't like. And upon watching it the second time, I was like, yeah, I don't like this. Like, this isn't rewatchable like the older movies are for me. So, I don't know. That's my Star Wars rant, and it went longer than I meant for it to. Oh my goodness, I've gone for 2.5 hours. No wonder I'm so hungry right now. I'm gonna stop with that. Thanks for anyone who is tuned into the show. Thank you for anyone who is watching this on archive. Like, sub, notification bell if you want. Please leave comments like on the archives if you're listening to us on the archive. If you love my Star Wars take, let me know. If you hate it, please tell me why. Give me a compelling reason to maybe change my mind. Or if there's a player for my draft grades, or if there's a team's draft you just want to crap on that maybe I liked, or something that I liked but you think is crap, let me know. Seriously, like, I want to hear about it. With that being said, y'all have